This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
All right, what's going on, folks? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily for a Wednesday afternoon. Great to have you all with us. Big show coming up with the latest on the Winnipeg Jets and a flurry of trade activity around the National Hockey League. We've got Dan Robertson, play-by-play voice of the Winnipeg Jets, coming up in a few minutes. We'll also have our weekly chat with Murat of The Athletic. And then a little later on, bringing some positive vibes to the Peg, four-time Scotties defending champion Kerri Einarson coming up on the program a little bit later on. We're going to get right into it. Before we do that, a huge thanks to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day, including Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Little Brown Jug, Culligan Water, Canadian Club, Vita Health Fresh Market, Wallace & Wallace, Consolidated Supply, F Apparel, Manitoba Battery, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, and we'll get to a why not question of the day for the gang over at Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Michael Remis, what is going on?
You know, I'm doing good. Feeling a bit better about the Jets after yesterday's performance. I think they checked a couple of boxes from what we wanted to see from them. But also, I'm just like so fired up with this trade deadline. This is crazy, Hustler. There's like trades every second. I can't keep up. There's so many trades. Like don't even know all the trades. Like you're like, is it Gus Nyquist get traded? Because every second there's a new trade. You can't keep up. This is so awesome.
How rattled must James Duthie be right now? Like what? Who's left to be traded right now? I actually have the TSN trade bait board up. Jacob Chikrin's number one.
Yeah.
Tyler Bertuzzi, we haven't heard very much about him now that I guess the Rings lost those two back-to-back games against Ottawa. He's now apparently on the board. JVR. I mean, Joel Edmondson, Cam Talbot, Gostisbehere. This is the top 10. Oh, and by the way, Carolina's first-round pick and St. Louis's first-round picks now in the top 10. It kind of seems like most of the players that we've been talking about potentially on the move have already moved.
These guys know what they're doing. They don't just blow smoke with these trade bait lists. So we were kind of waiting for Colorado to do something, waiting for Carolina to do the Puljujärvi move yesterday. I wonder if they have more moves, more significant move, because that was just a free player. But yeah, Colorado getting Lars Eller before we went on, which we had talked about here for the Jets would be nice, but that was a really nice ad for them. We thought they were going to get a second line center. Hadn't really replaced Kadri, and that's a guy who had played a huge role for the Capitals in their Stanley Cup win a couple years ago. So nice ad for Colorado.
Yeah, just a quick update before we get to the Jets game last night and more on the home team. Eller goes to the Avalanche. Washington retains 31% of Eller's cap hit and a 2025 second-round pick going to the Capitals. You mentioned Nyquist. That one completely escaped me. He's now a member of the Minnesota Wild. A fifth-rounder this year goes to the Columbus Blue Jackets. And after we finished the show yesterday, a flurry of deals. The Maple Leafs trading Rasmus Sandin to the Caps for Eric Gustafsson and Boston's first-round pick this year, and then turning around and acquiring Luke Schenn from the Canucks for a third-round pick this season. And, I talked about this with Dustin Nielsen today on the Lock Shop, obviously, with him being in Edmonton. I love the ad of Matthias Ekholm for the Edmonton Oilers. Now it's Tyson Barrie, Reed Schaefer, a first-rounder this year, a fourth-rounder in 2024 for Ekholm. Nashville's retaining 4% of the contract, I believe $250,000 a year. We've seen a lot of Matthias Ekholm here in Winnipeg in these battles with the Predators over the years. This is an absolute horse, and that is seemingly exactly the sort of type of player that the Edmonton Oilers needed. So Ken Holland gets in the mix. And then, of course, after the game last night, it was somewhat of a sullen or somber Kings dressing room, despite the comeback win in the shootout against the Winnipeg Jets, as Jonas Korpisalo and Vladislav Gavrikov go to LA from the Blue Jackets. They get a first rounder, a third rounder. But what was really, I think, surprising to everyone involved was the fact that Jonathan Quick, Kings legend, Stanley Cup winner, Conn Smythe winner, is now on his way to the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I don't think a lot of people saw Quick's tenure in the National Hockey League or with the Kings ending with the trade late last night.
Yeah, that was, someone who's followed the Kings for a while. I was pretty shocked by that. Huss, John Quick, Conn Smythe Trophy winner, 2-time Cup champion. You thought he was going to retire a King, play with one franchise, and to trade him to ship him off to Columbus from LA. I mean, that's kind of, I thought they did him pretty dirty. However, he is having not a great season. He is making $5 million, and to make trades, you need to free up salary. And for a guy who's not going to play for you, it really made sense for the Kings. But I think, we talk about Kane and Taves having these no trade clauses. John Quick didn't have one, and he got sent to Columbus. And Frank Cervalli reporting the fact that he was not happy about it was an understatement.
Yeah, there's plenty of smoke around that. And, Quick is, a guy that's done so much for that club. That being said, hasn't been getting the job done right now. And, we spent a lot of time yesterday talking about the fact that they needed someone to mix in a save every now and then. And looks like they're getting that guy in Korpisalo, which is an interesting transition into last night's game, Reem. Listen, the Jets didn't get 2 points, which they needed. On a positive note, they didn't get 0 points. Every point counts right now. But, man, being up 5-3 in that third period, that is a game that you had to have, especially with, speaking of goaltending, how porous Phoenix Copley was in the LA net. But a missed opportunity. But I think big picture for this Winnipeg Jets team, we did see a response last night, and I said yesterday on the show, who of the Jets' big difference makers was going to step up and be the change last night? Didn't take very long for us to see Josh Morrissey once again being the guy to stand up and in some ways put the team on his back. 2 goals in the first period. Just a massive performance from Morrissey, a 4-point night last night, proving his worth, and a huge part of the Jets at least having something to show for this 3-game homestand.
Yeah, they didn't win. They got a point. I think you're definitely disappointed by blowing 2-goal leads, losing in the shootout. However, there are a number of things you wanted to see coming into the game tonight. And also giving up 5 goals was a negative. But there's a lot of things you want to see, and I think we saw them. Just on Josh Morrissey, 4-point game, tying Bufflin for the record for points in a game by a defenseman, and that was in April of 2016. He led the team in ice time for the 4th straight game, played just under 26 minutes, 25:59. But there were things we wanted to see. We wanted to see the crowd get into it and give them something to cheer about. Well, when Josh Morrissey scores 2 in the first period, people get on their feet and they're fired up, and he was the guy who put the team on his back. We also wanted to see someone from the bottom 6 step up, and we didn't have Pierre-Luc Dubois in the game, and he didn't practice. Wasn't out for practice, but Kevin Stenlund came in, and he stepped up, scoring a shorthanded goal. So I think there were a lot of things, scoring 5 goals, scoring even strength goals. The goal scoring was back. The goal suppression was not there yesterday, and giving up 5 is, probably going to lose more often than not. When you give up 5, they did score 5, so they had a chance in the shootout, but I think they improved on a lot of things. But with 20 games left in the season, or 21, when you're kind of been not great here since the calendar turned, tough to be totally encouraged. But it was better. It was much better than what we saw against the Islanders and the Avalanche. Although that Islander game, pretty low bar, Hustler.
Yeah, well, exactly. It couldn't have gotten worse. But, listen, every single game right now is so crucial. And we've talked about what's to come for the Winnipeg Jets. Back-to-back games against the Edmonton Oilers, San Jose and Minnesota at home, and then on the road out east where they have had very little success so far this year. To Florida, to Tampa, to Carolina and then home against the Boston Bruins. Bruins did do the Jets a bit of a favor last night, beating the Calgary Flames, although the Flames, like Winnipeg, were able to grind a point out of that matchup right now. And as we look at the standings, the Jets dead even with the Edmonton Oilers, which is fascinating going into this weekend. 72 points in 61 games for both of those squads. The Kraken won last night. They're at 72, but with a game in hand. And then there's the Calgary Flames, who sit 5 points back right now in that 9th spot. And I mean, Nashville not entirely out of it, considering they've got 64 points and have 3 games in hand on both Calgary and Winnipeg. Listen, you need to, I mean, you're up 2 goals in the third period. I mean, that's a game that you absolutely have to have. But I think big picture, considering the lack of success this Winnipeg team has had over the course of the last number of weeks, what was most important was somebody stepping up the way Josh Morrissey did last night. A number of players being more impactful, the team looking like it had a lot more energy. And you just have to hope that they can build off that and find out more about practice today. I know Dan Robertson's going to join us in a few minutes. Build on that into a massive, massive weekend going up against the Edmonton Oilers on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, and a lot of talk yesterday about Nino Niederreiter coming in, playing his first game with the Winnipeg Jets, number 62. As you said, wanted to get a number to match his name for aesthetic purposes. But I think the reviews were pretty good. He's the kind of guy the team needed. Has led the team in hits with 5, and I'm just like kind of salivating here. The idea of him and Dubois there in the top 6, and you know, they need some bigger bodies. I was, you know, watching Kenny and Rennie and on the postgame, and Ken Weeb saying the Jets have too many skinny guys, basically. And you know, you put in Nino.
Going back to the Nintendo ice hockey theories.
You have to. How do you not? They have a lot of skinny guys. They need some big guys who can push people around. And you definitely saw him get into it yesterday. So I thought, you know, first game for him. I think reviews have to be positive, and you know, seeing like what they got Lars Eller for a second rounder, and there was some salary retain. I mean, getting him for a second rounder, and you have him for next year, I think that was a great deal so far. And we're you know, see people in chat fired up that the Jets haven't made any deals yet, but the trade deadline's tomorrow, so I'm not gonna evaluate the trade deadline based on rumors and until it's done. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Well, and I mean, something that's going to be interesting to talk and with Murat a little bit later on is, you know, what last night's game does for Kevin Cheveldayoff's position heading into Friday. I mean, first and foremost, so many of the players have already been dealt. But, I mean, I really did wonder about the reaction of the Winnipeg Jets and what the message that they were sending to their general manager was. I mean, the last couple of weeks has not been a positive trend for the club. And I think for many people that thought there were going to be some massive, super aggressive moves, I think that cooled a little bit over the course of the last little bit. Now, certainly they competed, they came out, they got something to show for last night's game. But I mean, for those of us, myself included, that thought that maybe the way the team had played might have a massive shift as to what the general manager was thinking. I'm not sure much changed right now, Reem, but the bottom line is if this team is going to make a push to the playoffs and do anything in the postseason, I think there might still be a little bit of work to be done for Kevin Cheveldayoff before Friday afternoon.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens here before Friday. What are they going to do? I don't know if they're going to go as all in as we thought, you know, when they were in first place, but we'll have to see. But it was encouraging, but I'm not so sure. Not so sure. Sorry, I'm just troubleshooting with Dan in the room there. But
no problem. Well, listen, Dan Robertson is going to jump on with us in just a couple seconds. You know, Josh Morrissey, star of the game last night, 2 goals, 2 assists, and Kevin Stenlund. You know, we've had some fun with Stenny. He had a great kind of emergence into the team, Reem. Had played well. He, like so many players in the bottom 6, snake bit, not getting a lot of chances or opportunities. But he did it twice last night, including a shorty. Listen, that was a nice sign of some life from that bottom 6. Unfortunately, we've also talked about the team just needs 3 goals to win, and they had 5, and unfortunately didn't get 2 points in the win column.
No, do not. I do give a shout out. Dylan DeMello, Huss, in a 5-5 game, he was +5.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy. And one away from the franchise record. It's Richard Schmelik. Remember him too? Which is so. I hate how they do these Thrasher records, but that's fine. They did look great in the the heritage jerseys we've seen all week. And we do have to give a shout out, a nice feature on Ray Neufeld on the broadcast. He was there dropping the puck for Black History, and he's part of Black History Month. And I like seeing that as part of game feature, and nice for him to nice honor for him to drop the puck as well.
You got it. Hey, listen, we will hear from Rick Bowness and Josh Morrissey, but Dan Robertson's here ready to go, so we'll do that maybe after Dan joins us, before Murat. Do have to give a big thanks to one of our best supporters, Dallas Pauls. Thanks so much for the super chat, Dallas. Huss and Remis, you guys are awesome. Have a beer on me after the show today. Will do, Dallas. Thank you very much for that. All right, so Dan Robertson's coming up. Murat Atesh a little later on. And curling fans, the queen of Canadian curling, reigning 4 times in a row, Kerri Einarson, coming up a little later on the program as well. Before we get to Dan, folks, if you're in need of a battery for your car, your truck, or even that summer toy you're working on, Manitoba Battery is the most convenient and well-priced option in the city, and you'll be shopping local. Heck, you can put the order in for a battery around now and having it sitting on your doorstep in 2 to 4 hours for less money than you'd spend anywhere else in Winnipeg on the same battery. Manitoba Battery is basically the Amazon of batteries here in Winnipeg. No fighting for a parking spot at Costco. No waiting in line at Canadian Tire. No spending more money on a battery at the big box stores. Let Manitoba Battery bring it to you while you spend time on more important things. Give them a phone call. You can always pop in and check them out on Logan Avenue, or order online at manitobabattery.com, and let Manitoba Battery simplify your life. Cannot wait for this snow to melt, get to some playoff hockey, and of course, get outside and make the most of our summer. Consolidated Supply is already ready for golf season. Folks, if you are have landscaping issues with irrigation or looking for artificial turf, they're the leaders in that. And of course, the club car dealer for Manitoba as well, if you're thinking about maybe getting a little unit to rip around over the course of the summer on the cottage or on your lot. But they do so much more as well. Incredible selection of spas and hot tubs, as well as amazing outdoor kitchens as well. Start thinking about that summer project and let Joe, Spicy, and the gang help you do that. Pop down and see them, 1395 Niagara Road East, or you can check them out online at cte.ca. Don't forget the Unsung Hero program with our friends at Wallace & Wallace and Jets All-Star defenseman Josh Morrissey continues. Let us know about that person in the community in your life that is making an impact, whether it be through volunteering, long hours, helping out charities, or maybe just being that go-to person on the block that helps those in need. Let us know about that person. Unsung Hero at winnipegsportstalk.com is where you want to send the nominations into. Our Unsung Hero will get an autographed jersey from Jets All-Star defenseman Josh Morrissey, and Wallace & Wallace will make a $500 donation to the Dream Factory in the name of the Winnipeg Sports Talk listener that nominated our Unsung Hero, and Josh and Margot Morrissey will match that as well. Unsung Hero at winnipegsportstalk.com. And just before we get to Dan, huge thanks to our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market. If you're looking for great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries, and Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products as well, Vita Health is the spot. And you can get ready for St. Patrick's Day with all of your favorites. If you're looking to celebrate the day with some non-alcoholic craft beer, mocktails, and some great snacks too. And with spring just around the corner, get ready for it with Ultimate Male Energy. Formulated specifically for men over 35, Ultimate Male Energy is designed to help improve testosterone production, reduce excess body fat, build muscle tissue, maintain prostate health, and more. It's on sale today at Vita Health. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives. 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. Well, we did see more male energy from the Winnipeg Jets last night, and that was exactly what this team needed, although the result wasn't quite what they or their fans had hoped. Let's get the latest on the club with the voice of the Jets on TSN, our pal Dan Robertson. Dan, what's up, man? Great to have you back on the show.
Oh, it's good to be back. How have you been?
Well, we've been kind of, like everyone else, going along with the ups and downs of this hockey club. It's been a wild season, but obviously the last stretch has not been smooth sailing. You've been behind the microphone for all of these games. I'm very interested in your perspective on where the Jets are right now, because there has been an element of deja vu for some people that have seen some second half slumps in the past. You haven't been around for those. I mean, what's your perspective on where this team is right now as we get closer to the Friday trade deadline?
I look back and look at the first 30 games or so, and it seemed to me that the team got a lot of breaks. Now, they earned them, but it almost seemed like when they were maybe trailing by a goal or even two, they found a way more often than not to come back. Or if they had a 2-game losing streak. Remember, now that I say that, they didn't have many 2-game losing streaks, if you want to call them that. They were able to nip it in the bud almost right away. So I think every season comes with its challenges. And Rick Bowness said yesterday, we'll learn a lot about this team in the next couple of weeks. But it was interesting last night. They finally scored, and you could feel the dam break a little bit. So it was nice to see them to get moving offensively. But just overall, you get the feeling that there's not as much confidence with the team as there was in the first 30 games. I mean, a bit of a losing skid will do that. So I'm really fascinated to see, where they go from here. Connor Hellebuck's allowed, I guess, 10 goals in his last 2 games. You can't put that all on him, but at some point that number will correct itself a little bit. And it's the other thing too is you really feel the intensity changing across the league. Obviously now with the trade deadline coming up, the games that were a little easier to play in earlier in the season, it's not the case anymore.
No, that certainly is an astute point, and I think we're sort of seeing the Jets maybe being, in the past couple of weeks, caught off guard by how much other teams had sort of ramped up that level of urgency, intensity, and we saw it. I mean, for me last night, Dan, we talked a lot on the show. We've heard what Rick Bowness had to say going into Friday. We know what happened there. There was a test of the character and pride of the club Sunday afternoon. That did not go well. To me, it was about who was going to step up and be a difference maker last night. And no surprise that Josh Morrissey, once again, was that guy for the Winnipeg Jets. What did you think about his impact last night and the statement that he made when his team needed someone to raise their hand and say they are that guy?
Well, I know the result was different, but it reminded me of the game just before the break when they beat the Blues. And,
big time.
He stepped up, and we all remember the celebration that he had when he scored one of the goals. So it was similar last night, and I think that's what I was kind of waiting for all along during this slump, to see which of the big guys, so to speak, were going to step up and kind of grab a game by the throat. So it was Josh last night. I mean, he was brilliant again. It wasn't enough, but what you say, just to go back to that for a minute, it stands out to me too. I mean, as soon as they lost to the Islanders in New York last week, Rick said, Friday's game is the biggest of the year. We'll see how they respond. So that comes and goes. They didn't respond well. Then it was, okay, we'll see what they're made of, to paraphrase, on Sunday. And that game didn't go well either. So it was nice to see them at least get a point last night. But at some point, and Bowness has said this too, we're tired of meetings. We're tired of talking. We want to see it on the ice. So where they go from here in these next 2 games against a team with an injection of life from the trade market with the Oilers, it's going to be a fascinating pair of games in the back-to-back Friday and Saturday.
Well, and we'll see what these teams look like by the time we get to Friday, because, my God, there's been a lot of activity around the National Hockey. We'll get to that in a minute. But as far as last night, I mean, we could talk about Morrissey's performance, and certainly Kevin Stenlund. I mean, my God, the bottom 6 needed to do something. And I thought he really acquitted himself well with a couple of big goals. But we did see the debut of Nino Niederreiter, who came in the midst of this skid right now, led the team in hits, seemingly fitting quite well. Unfortunate that Dubois wasn't there, so they could have really had those full top 2 lines. But what did you think about Niederreiter in his Jet debut last night?
I thought he came as advertised, and I'm always a little leery of players when they make their debut with a team after what had to be a crazy, little more than a couple of days for Niederreiter. And he talked about how he found out that he was being traded, and it can't be easy for anybody to sort of make that move, and you're going on adrenaline, and then you find yourself in your first game in a New Jersey after meeting new players. But I liked how he played physically. That hit on Dursey, they gave him a couple of minutes for the head contact, but the Jets do need more of that. Not specifically big hits in open ice or along the boards, but somebody who brings his size and gets to the net. So I like to give guys like that a little bit of grace, right? Allow them to settle in and see where they go from there. But I really like the trade. It's a quality player for a second-round pick, and I think had Perfetti not been hurt, they needed to make that move anyway, or something similar. So, and you're right. I didn't think about that. Without Dubois in there, the top six not really cemented. It's a little more difficult to get a good read. I said it during the broadcast. If you want to make some fans of yourself in your first game with a new team, take a run at somebody like he did with Jersey. The fans love that. So I think he's going to fit nicely.
Well, and to be honest, that's exactly what this team needed. I mean, the one thing that seemingly was lacking a little bit, you mentioned confidence, but also that energy and emotion. And I think back to Rick Bowness early on in the season, Dan, at a far less crucial time than we're at right now, mentioning that, the bench was quiet at times, and he wanted to bring that passion back to his club. And sometimes it's hard to do that when things aren't going well. Guys are looking around and sort of waiting for something to happen, and often, unfortunately, expecting the worst. What did you think about Bones' handling of the team and what he had to say? Because, man, as much as we wanted to see that reaction last night, and we did see it from some players, it has been very interesting seeing how Rick has handled the media over the course of this last week or so, because it's been quite a departure from the guy that was pulling no punches for the better part of the first 45, 50 games of the season.
Yeah, it is. It's all fascinating, right? So even when they were successful or going through their best parts of the season and something would go wrong, he would, as you're alluding to, he would mention it sort of in the media in an attempt to help nip it in the bud. And I like that. So the thing with Rick, he's been around a long time, and somebody said that to him the other day after practice, and he joked, he said, "You guys always bring that up, that I've been around for a long time," kind of making a crack at his age, I guess, in his own way. But I think you have to give him the benefit of the doubt, too, that he knows when to change the message or let somebody else give the message. I thought it was quite fascinating the other day how he ran practice on, I guess it would have been Monday, and he said sometimes it's the time to let your assistants run practice. Today was a practice for me to run, and he was very vocal. And I guess obviously he has a feel of when too much yelling and too much barking becomes too much. Again, he can lean on his experience there, and but that's, you get to the point in the season too when players can tend to tune that out. I think it's too early for that. I like what he's doing, but again, I give him a nod to his experience to let him know the best way to handle these things. There's never an easy way out, right? Even a guy with that much experience to try to push the right buttons. He went back a few games ago, and I guess it was Saturday. They canceled practice, and he said to us, "Well, maybe I made the right move. I'm not sure. I guess we'll know against the Islanders." He was kind of banking on rest rather than another practice. So, no matter how many times you've been around the league or how many years you've coached, it's an imperfect art. You're always kind of searching for the right answers, and he's hoping that he's found the right ones. Another pretty good practice today where he was demonstrative again and making sure guys paid attention to the small details or the large details too. So all part of trying to guide the team that's in a bit of a slump right now.
Well, you know what? And you mentioned practice today. I mean, I was just about to ask you about that. I mean, and we don't need to get into the drills and whatnot, but the atmosphere, the vibe around the team. I mean, I don't think that they're pleased with just getting the 1 point from last night, but it's a lot better than losing in regulation, and there were signs of life. What did you see today at practice, and how would you compare it to some of the recent practices that you've been in attendance for?
Well, probably not quite as intense as the practice on Monday, but still, he was making it clear what he wanted and what he needed. And guys getting to the net, and paying attention to those details, right? One thing that's interested me all year long about his practices, and I don't know that I've really seen this before, one of the details that he looks at if there's a line rush, he won't let guys go offside. If they do, he blows the whistle and makes them do it again. I guess the thought being, you wouldn't do it in a game, right? So that's it. It's more about details. But again, he was barking, and I don't mean that in a negative way. So he's got the foot down right now, and you can see too when you're winning, right? Guys are a little more lighthearted, even if it is a hard practice. There's a little more laughter, a little more joking, and that sort of thing. Don't see a heck of a lot of that right now, and that's understandable because they're in a tough spot as they get ready for Edmonton for 2 in a row on Friday.
Yeah, and Dan, I was just, Reem and I were, getting into the show, and we're obviously, like so many people, we're looking at the standings every day, and the Edmonton Oilers lost earlier this week to the Boston Bruins. But before that, they had some dreadful performances. I do a show with Dustin Nielsen on TSN in Edmonton, and often have some fun talking to him about how the text line's looking in the morning when the sky is falling. They went a stretch of 18 games with only one loss in regulation. And the regulation losses is what's really hampering the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, they haven't been getting to overtime like they did last night, and Dallas has an extra 12 points on them in that category. But the Edmonton Oilers and Winnipeg Jets are in a dead heat at 72 points in 61 games. And it just speaks to how incredibly wide open the West is, but also how a slump or not getting points to show for a few games like the Winnipeg Jets have had can really change your position in a very quick fashion.
It is amazing. What were they, 4 points out of first last night? So you kind of look at it that way. Some people feel the sky is falling, and maybe they're justified. But if you look at it in the other sense, it's a good team that you would expect would get things turned around. I'd be interested to know obviously they're different markets, right? There's more, I think, going into the season. There's more high hopes on the Oilers from their fan base than there would have been from Jets fans, I would imagine. And so are the Oilers fans happy with where they are right now as compared to the Jets fans? But it's one of those things, you look at it, I think coming into the season too, you knew there's a lot of quality in the Central. I'm a little bit surprised that St. Louis kind of went the way they did. But I think we all felt once Colorado got a little bit healthy, then we knew what would happen. They just picked up Lars Eller today, too, who I thought might have been a decent fit here in Winnipeg. But, it's tight. So, and that's what I mentioned earlier. All of a sudden, it's like a switch was flipped, and it's kind of playoff intensity, or it's close to it. And I know last night was a little bit messy and higher scoring than I think we all thought it would be. But and maybe it's just in my own head, but I felt kind of the feeling in the building had that kind of playoff pulse to it. They got the 2 goals to start the game, and then the fans were a certain way. And then when the Kings tied it late on the Balharry goal, you could have heard a pin drop. So all part of the fun of getting to hockey now on the 1st of March.
Yeah, it has been quite a roller coaster. And I mean, just looking at the standings right now as far as the West goes, I mean, it really is crazy. The Jets technically are in the 8th spot right now. They're 4 points out of first in the conference. There are 4 points, Dan, separating the 8 teams, and then another 5 points with the Calgary Flames knocking on the door. And we're going to see a pushback from the Flames. I mean, I think Linus Ullmark made 54 saves last night in that game. Sometimes objects in the mirror are closer than they appear, but everyone's so bunched up and from 1 to 8 right now. I can't remember a scenario like this at this point in the season in a long time.
No, I can't either, but that's what makes it fun. And that's what makes guys grip the stick a little more tight, too, I think, when things aren't going well. Because, if you're having a bit of a slump in December, that's one thing. But and I wonder this, too. Sometimes I say it on the broadcast, and I think, should I say what the standings are? Is it, scoreboard watching, is it too early for that? Well, I don't think it is.
No.
Yeah. So, but that's what makes it fun, right? So you look at different teams. I mean, Dallas, they've been in a bit of a slide too, right? So they're in a better spot, obviously, going into play at the start of last week, for example, than the Jets were. But they had a chance to not pull away, but get a little bit of breathing room. Nobody's perfect in the Central. And I think, as I said earlier, Colorado's Colorado. When they get healthy, look out. But It's just about playing well at the right time and then seeing where it goes from there. But it's fun. Again, I keep saying it's a fun time of the year, but you look at the calendar and you think, okay, Jets have that southeastern U.S. trip coming up where it's back-to-back. The Panthers and Tampa, that's tough. Carolina's tough. I guess, if you don't play well, everybody's tough. Columbus beat them twice this year, so it's cliche, but you have to bring your A game on a nightly basis.
Yeah, no freebies in the National Hockey League. That is for sure. Before we get to Friday night, there's the trade deadline. I'm not sure who's still available considering how many trades we've seen over the last little bit, but what are you expecting much from the Winnipeg Jets? Do you think there'll be some more moves? Will be these significant? Will they be more on the periphery, maybe adding to the bottom six? How active do you think this club might be?
Well, I've thought all along that they need somebody who can win some faceoffs, and I referenced that when I talked about Eller earlier. And the main reason I believe that is just that Rick Bowness has talked about not getting another centerman, but when they haven't been good at the dot, which is for the most part they haven't been this year, I've thought all along he and Cheveldayoff speak, and that's probably something that Rick wants. Now, who is available out there? I wouldn't think it would be a big name. As you said, a lot of them are off the board. Now, I mean, you're looking at, okay, Dmitry Kulikov's been held back. And what a strange trend this is where guys aren't playing now as they might be traded. John Klingberg, things like that. So it's starting. James Van Riemsdyk. I mean, at some point, do you trade for guys just for the sake of trading? Well, no. But I do think that they could use a little bit more depth on D. I know, obviously, they have a guy like Capobianco. Stanley got back in the lineup last night. I think if they could get an upgrade there somewhere, that would make sense. But, as the list gets smaller of available players, in theory, the price goes up. So I would, my guess is something, maybe a depth player or two. But my other thinking is if Cheveldayoff doesn't get anything else done than the Niederreiter trade, I think he's going to hear about it from the fan base.
Oh, well, listen, Dan, I mean, we're here every day. I mean, just check out the chat. I mean, we're winning the cup one week, blowing it up the next day. I mean, but listen, that's part of the fun about being in a passionate market like we've got here in Winnipeg. And, through the good and the bad, the one thing is that people are dialed into this hockey club and really do care. And I'm sure you're seeing that and feeling that on a daily basis now that you're a little more entrenched as the day-to-day voice of the Winnipeg Jets on TSN.
I am, and it's cool. Some people might come up to you in the grocery store, and the other day it was, I kind of turned around. Somebody was right there, didn't say hi or anything. It was just, you think Morrissey should win the Norris? And I kind of jumped back, and then we had a good little chat. But I probably said it to you before the last time I was on. That's one of the reasons I was so interested to come here, is because it's such a passionate market. And I suppose you could say that in every city in Canada that it is that way. But and I asked Cheveldayoff this. I guess it would have been the halfway point of the regular season. He came on with us. We were in Buffalo, I believe, and I think my question was along the lines of, with such a great fan base, I mean, do you ever feel kind of that you owe them to make a couple of moves or, go for it, I guess? And I mean, in theory, if you run a hockey team that way, it's not a smart thing. And he kind of, sidestepped the question. But my point was that in a roundabout way, as you said, the West is open. This is a good team. If not now, to make some risky trades that might pan out for you, when do you do it, right? And he gave me a good answer too. It's easier said than done. What would other teams want for certain players? You wonder what GMs go through on days like this as you get closer to the trade deadline and just how much they sleep. But if there is somebody of high value out there for the Jets who would really fit, right now I'm not sure who that would be.
No, and I mean, I think the way that the team has played over the last little bit probably, maybe pumps the brakes a little bit on, completely selling the future to make something happen right now. But in a lot of ways, Dan, I mean, the other thing that is in the background of everything that we're talking about in the present is a real crossroads for the organization with the number of players that have been the part of the core. Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, certainly the Pierre-Luc Dubois situation. I mean, it's pretty hard to just speak about Friday and right now is in the big picture of this year. because so many of those decisions will affect what happens beyond this. And regardless of what happens on Friday and the rest of this season, I think we're all in for a very interesting summer when it comes to the future of this team, and especially core players that are a big part of the team's success in the past.
No, that's the thing, and it is fascinating. And I look, what was it the other day? Yesterday, I think I heard that Ken Holland said he would be willing to trade a first-round pick for a rental. I'm quite sure that I saw that. Now, the Oilers are obviously in a different situation than the Jets. They have the best player in the game in his prime, and Draisaitl's right there too. Every organization is different. I'd rather have a GM who doesn't think along those lines. Now, maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I said just a minute ago that at what point, if you don't make some significant moves for the now, then when do you do it? But I mean, Cheveldayoff knows better than any of us the situation that you're talking about, with some players either getting older or getting near the end of their contract, or perhaps not wanting to be here long term. So I know there's reason to believe in this team, right? And I think they're better than they've shown the last week and a half. Now, are they as good as they showed us the first 30 games? I think so, pretty close. They have an ace in the hole and a terrific goaltender in Hellebuyck, and that will cover up a lot of blemishes when he gets back on his game. And I think that's going to happen. But as I said, if the Niederreiter move is the only move, then I can see a lot of hair pulling among Jets fans.
Yeah, I think the hair is going to be pulled no matter what. That being said, nothing that a few wins won't take care of. We just kind of mentioned that the Winnipeg Jets and Edmonton Oilers in a dead heat right now with 72 points in 61 games. What a scenario we've got coming up this weekend with 2 games 22 hours apart in the two cities between teams that are tied right now in the NHL standings.
And so there's a lot of subplots, right? Do you go back-to-back with Hellebuyck? Here's a guy who the second of the back-to-back when he was at Madison Square Garden played one of the best games of his career. Riddick's been pretty good this year. What do you do? Do you let him go Saturday? Do you see what happens Friday? That's just sort of one subplot. I mean, they play again their next game is against a weak Sharks team on Monday, I guess it is, after that, and then Minnesota 2 nights after that. So that's just one angle. With me, you look at the Oilers, and to me, you're not sure what you're going to get from them, from one night to the next. So, but you can only kind of take care of yourself and put your best foot forward. Will Dubois be able to play? He didn't practice today. So, and just to go to him for a minute, you wondered, I think he had 3 points in his previous 9 games, and I thought something was up, because he'd been so dominant all year long, and then for that stretch, he wasn't the same player. So you wonder just how healthy he is, and when he comes back, how healthy he'll be. But if I were to try to predict what's going to happen this weekend against the Oilers, I wouldn't do a very good job. I really have no clue, right? You try to limit the McDavids and the Draisaitl's. That's easier said than done. How does their power play look now that Barry's gone? Obviously, there's still a lot of weapons there. It was an interesting acquisition with Ekholm, so I don't know what we're going to see, but I'm really anxious to see Friday and Saturday. Yeah,
it is going to be a lot of fun. Like I said with Dusty today on the Lock Shop, there was some consternation. Like, what does this do to the power play? If 97's on your power play, I think you're going to be. I think you're going to be fine. By the way, Remo right. Just letting us know a big signing extension of Dylan Larkin in Detroit. He will stay with the Red Wings, the team that he's played with his entire career, 8 years at $8.7 million. Dan Robertson is with us, voice of the Jets on TSN. Dan, before we go, I want to just quickly step back from the minutia of last night's game and the trade deadline. You're about 3/4 of the way through your first season here in Winnipeg. We've talked about the fan base, but I just wanted to ask you, I mean, looking at this season so far, is there a player or players that have stood out that have really surprised you that maybe you weren't as much on your radar before? I mean, get us into the booth in the day-to-day right now and looking at this 60 games so far. What has sort of stood out to you amongst guys that have maybe impressed you or maybe off the ice been particularly fun to deal with?
Well, I'll go with the second first. Adam Lowry couldn't be a nicer person. I chatted with him, I don't know, a month ago, and I just asked him one question, and he he kept talking. Most players will answer your question and maybe another question and you move on, and that's fine. But he was really engaging, right? And it was just nice to talk to someone like that. And Nate Schmidt's a cool guy too, and always smiling. We know that. And Dylan DeMello wished me a happy birthday the other day, so that was kind of cool. Like it's just it's nice when guys show a personal side to them. And I suppose this won't surprise you when I say it, but I had no idea Josh Morrissey was this good. Now, this is clearly his best season. And I knew he was a brilliant skater. And the two times I would call Jets games a year before this, I very much appreciated that. I didn't know that he had that strong of a defensive game in him, but more importantly, that offense. Last night when he took that pass from DeMello, and I thought, okay, he's going to score because he had a chance to walk down to the top of the circle. He has such a hard and accurate shot. There's just so many things to like about his game. Pierre-Luc Dubois, too, I think we've seen him really blossom this year, to the point where he, if not totally take over games, certainly long stretches of time where it's really fun to watch him, where he almost welcomes contact. He almost draws a couple of guys to him and likes that. He can hang on to it and wait till somebody gets open and make a pass. And I love seeing somebody evolve that way, where you can see their confidence grow sort of right before your eyes, where no longer are they tentative with the puck, but now they're kind of, playing like I'm the man. And I love that. So that's why it's too bad he's been shaken up lately, and you hope he can come back and find his form. But it's cool to see different players find their highest level at different ages. Right, it's nobody's a cookie cutter. Not many people come right into the league, even as high picks like Morrissey and Dubois, and dominate right away. It takes a while, but and really, there's been no, other than Dubois' play during this time where he's probably been hurt. There's not been a drop off for me between those guys. They've been consistent and remarkable all year long.
Well, Dan, you have been consistent and remarkable all year long in your first year with the Winnipeg Jets. So many great comments in the chat from Jet fans and how much they've been enjoying the broadcasts. And as they say, we talk about the playoffs coming up. The playoffs really are now. And this stretch run of games is going to be a heck of a lot of fun to see what happens starting on Friday night. Thank you so much for doing this, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Anytime. Thanks a lot.
Dan Robertson, voice of the Jets on TSN, joining us today on Winnipeg Sports Talk. We will talk much more Jets. Murat coming up a little later on. But we will hear from Rick Bowness and Josh Morrissey post-game and talk a little bit about that coming up in just a couple seconds. Do have to thank our friends over at Royal Sports. We mentioned Nito Niederreiter's debut yesterday. He had a very aesthetically pleasing looking jersey with the big name and the big numbers, number 62. If you're looking for a new jersey of Niederreiter or any of the Winnipeg Jets, or just the best selection in Winnipeg Jets merchandise, pop down and check out our pals down at Royal Sports. Huge selection of Bomber gear as well, and NFL, Major League Baseball with Blue Jays season right around the corner, international soccer, NHL outside of the Winnipeg Jets as well. They really do have it all. It must be seen to be believed. While you're there, check out the great deals in the hockey department, including some Warriors sticks, 50% off. And of course, you might not know, but if you're getting ready to hit the hills come spring break time, the best selection of snowboard gear and equipment as well. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. And follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. Speaking of gear, if you got to gear it up a little bit, the best selection of menswear, including custom suits, custom shirts, pants, and more, is down at F Apparel at 190 Smith Street downtown. Custom suits beginning at just $400, not to mention custom shirts, tucked and untucked, as well as golf pants, chinos, and much, much more. Fellas, if you're in a wedding party this year, don't waste your money renting tuxes and sending them back the next day. Talk to the guys at F Apparel about getting the fellas suited up in custom suits from F Apparel that you can wear long beyond the big day. And everyone in the wedding party will get a 15% off discount when the wedding party purchases their suits over at F Apparel. And by the way, if you got a 2023 grad in the house as well, get the young man set up with a custom suit. It will come with a free custom shirt and tie from the gang at F Apparel. 190 Smith Street downtown. Find out more or make an appointment online at that's EPHapparel.com. No Jets game tonight, but 6 games in the National Hockey League, including a big one between the Leafs and the Edmonton Oilers. No better place to get together with the gang and watch the big game on the big screen than your local Boston Pizza, chowing down on famous Boston's wings, gourmet pizzas, and maybe an ice cold schooner or two as well. And heck, if you're staying at home, you can always order online and get the great taste of Boston Pizza delivered hot and fast to your home by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. All right, let's get Remis back in here. Man, that was a fun conversation with Dan. He is, big shoes to fill from our guy Dennis Bayak, but I mean, as Jet fans, man, are we lucky to move from a legend like Dennis to Dan, who's just been killing it all year long.
Yeah, Dan has a great call of the game, and seeing a lot of comments in chat saying that the Jets, having Dan has made losing Dennis more bearable, but he's also been one of the bright spots of the season, and I do enjoy tuning in to every game on TSN and seeing Dan and Kevin's call, and very nice of Dan to join us and while working through some of the technical issues in the back end. Again, I used to text Dan all the time when he was with Montreal, and he was always get back to me right away and would come on with Rick, because him and Rick, they grew up together out east. So
Maritime boys.
Yeah, exactly. So it was great. Great again. I was very nervous in the summer, and we've had this conversation before. We're nervous in the summer about the Jets broadcast, but look, we got so used to Dennis, Sarah, and Kevin or Shane or whoever.
Well, not to mention, we didn't even know who was going to do the games until officially like a day before the season started.
And that was the number one off-season question. No one really cared. I mean, the roster, sure, but literally every day, okay, who's the play-by-play guy? And we're lucky to have Dan, and he's thanks to him for joining us today.
Well, yeah, really appreciated Dan jumping on with us. Murat is going to come up. He's heading back from practice. We'll hear what happened today at the rink, and maybe hear from Rick Bowness a little later on as far as what happened today. But Remo, let's get to the clips coming out of last night's game. As I said, we got to Dan a little bit early. I did want to play on this, and let's start off with the Rick Bowness. We'll go 6 through 9. And then hear from Josh Morrissey, who had such a monster game last night when his team needed it so badly. Listen, Bones had challenged his club, said that the game was challenging them. It did not go well on the weekend. Certainly a better response last night, and putting a few red lights on certainly helped, although the final result wasn't quite what they wanted. 1 point better than 0, that's for sure. Here's what Bones had to say about last night's game against the Kings.
Well, at least the energy was there, the compete was there. A couple of blown assignments, a couple of fluky, breaks on that, like the fourth goal that goes right onto the hottest player in the game. But we competed hard tonight. We did.
The blown assignments thing is that a confidence thing that we're at this stage?
No, that's just a mistake. I mean, don't overanalyze it. They made a mistake.
All right, Bones last night. You have to appreciate his frankness, and they're always going to be mistakes. Sometimes they get magnified a little bit more, especially as he mentioned, Reem, when the puck goes to Anze Kopitar, who we didn't spend a lot of time talking about, but talk about putting a team on your back last night. I mean, they weren't getting any goaltending, and he just simply went out and scored 4 times for the Los Angeles Kings at the Canada Life Center.
As muted. Anze Kopitar, man, he's been so hot, Hustler, over the last 15 games here. 22 points, which is absolutely absurd. And with his play last night, there's going to be a lot of debates about him. Hall of Fame. He's got the 2 Stanley Cups. He's captain. Internationally, he's really carried Slovenia on his back. Huge fan of Anze Kopitar. And Josh Morrissey said yesterday after the game, I mean, he looks the same that he did 10 years ago with the Kings when they were winning Stanley Cups. And again, he's on a tear. I didn't think he had this level still in him, but he's been so consistent throughout his career.
Yeah, and Kopitar, he's still doing it at 35 years old, has the one more year on his deal at $10 million. And while players like Jonathan Quick, are no longer even with the Kings, but, have sort of aged and their plays fallen off, can't say that about the captain of the LA Kings, Anze Kopitar, who was such a force last night. Let's get back to Bones, though, and hear what he thought about the newest Winnipeg Jet, Nino Niederreiter, who made his Jet debut last night at Canada Life Center.
He's a solid top six guy. We got to get the power play going, clearly, and he was good. The role we asked him to play in the power play, he did a good job in the bumper position. That's what he is. He's a big guy that goes to the net and finishes checks. I thought he was, for his first game with us, I thought he was very good.
All right, there's Bones on Nino Niederreiter's debut with the Winnipeg Jets. Now, listen, it was much better than what happened on the weekend, but they didn't get the 2 points. Bones just touched on the mood around the club after playing much better, but not getting the desired result.
When things aren't going your way, this is what usually happens. We got to just keep, that was a good sign tonight. They don't always automatically go your way. So we just got to we got to build on it. And, we're going to have a tough weekend with Edmonton back to back. But if we play as hard as we did tonight, then we'll be okay.
All right, Rick Bowness on the mood after playing much better, but not getting the 2 points. One more from Bones, and he sort of alluded to this when speaking about Nino Niederreiter. The power play has been struggling lately. Here's what Bones had to say about the Jets' PP.
Not good enough. No, it's still not good enough. The puck doesn't move quick enough. And when it does, we're okay. When we hang on to it and look around, it hasn't been good enough.
Reem, Rick's exactly right. I mean, the power play has been, a bit of a thorn for the Winnipeg Jets over the last little while. And, at times, not as much last night, but over the course of those last 2 to 3 weeks when the team has looked sort of stale and not playing with a lot of confidence, the power play really does look like completely different than what it did earlier on this year, when not only were they moving the puck around, but they were also moving the personnel around and creating space and time on that man advantage. And that's still a major thing for the Winnipeg Jets to get going, because a team like the Edmonton Oilers is going to have their power play popping even without Tyson Barrie on the point.
Yeah, I saw some takes on it. The Oilers power play is going to suffer. No, they don't have Tyson Barrie. I mean, they got McDavid and Draisaitl. Nugent Hopkins having a great year. I think they'll be okay. I do like the Ekholm acquisition, but you look at some of the Jets games here. I mean, it would have been nice to get a power play goal last night. They had a third period power play against the Islanders in Brooklyn. They don't play in Brooklyn anymore, on Long Island. The Blue Jackets game, you went 1 for 7. New Jersey game 0 for 3. Some of these games here I know they won against the Blues, but 0 for 6 against the Blues in that game before the break. So, there's been games where they needed the power play to score a goal, and it just hasn't been there. Now, they did score one against the Rangers in the game that they won, but it just, when, you need a boost from the power play and you're in a tight game and you need that goal and they're giving you a chance with the man advantage, the Jets really haven't taken advantage, and that's a power play that was so good to start the year. And again, it's a tale of two halves has for the Jets as we move on.
Yeah, Kevin Kowalik with a great comment, which is basically echoing what I was saying. Just pass a lot, but don't move much. Defending teams don't need to move at all. And the power play at time has seemed pretty predictable right now. Hopefully Nino Niederreiter can help that. Well, the big question on this program yesterday was who was going to step up. What sort of emotional response would we get from the Winnipeg Jets? And there was one guy that led the way last night, and that was Josh Morrissey. What a season he's having. 2 goals, 2 assists last night. Josh spoke after the game, and first up just discussed what went down last night in that shootout loss to the Kings.
I thought we competed super hard, played well, some tough breaks, puck goes off a ref, and I thought we played really well in that game. Obviously, you give up up 5 goals, and you don't want to do that. But I don't have a huge problem with the way we competed and the way we played. There's some mistakes clearly that we need to clean up, a couple tip goals and stuff like that. But the compete was there, the effort was there, and I mean, it's a team we're fighting with, an intense game. You get the lead, you want to keep it, but we played really hard, and considering the last number of games, we're going to build off that.
Well, the team certainly did play hard, and it was Josh Morrissey leading the way, as he has all season long. Morrissey also talked about his newest teammate, Nino Niederreiter, in his debut last night.
I thought he was great, physical, obviously. I thought tough call on that one. Guy's a lot smaller than him and kind of leaning down. He's a big physical guy. He's makes a lot of little plays, competes hard. So, he brings all those intangibles that you want this time of year. And, we've seen it enough in the Central when he was in Minnesota and Nashville to know that's the type of player he is. So he's just going to get more comfortable, and I thought he was great.
All right, there's Josh Morrissey. Now, the last time Morrissey sort of put the team on his back was at the end of January, heading into the player break and the All-Star game with the Morrissey game, as it's known, and him did an incredible performance in the third period. That was a time where Josh Morrissey certainly got the fans back into the game. Morrissey talked a little bit about the atmosphere last night and the impact that the fans had.
Yeah, it's massive. We want to make this arena a tough one for road teams to play in. Certainly, we don't want to give up 5 goals, but when we're playing aggressive and physical and getting to the net and playing fast, using our speed, we're that's our identity, or at least the identity that we're trying to have, and we have when we're playing our best. So I think that's an exciting brand of hockey to watch, and our fans, I think, are super knowledgeable here, which is, on nights when you're not playing your best, they notice all the little things too. So, which is why it's such a great hockey market, and the fans, like I said, have that knowledge of the game. So, when they see we're competing, when we're working hard, when we're battling and playing fast, it's nice to see them get up and behind us. We know they're there for us.
Now, there's Josh Morrissey on the crowd last night, and that was something that, you really felt in the building, Reem. The fans that were there last night were behind the Winnipeg Jets. They certainly expected to see more than the team put forth on Friday and Sunday. But they got that last night, and, despite the ups and downs of the game, I think we're firmly behind the Winnipeg Jets and doing what they could to try to, add whatever the atmosphere can do to the environment around a big game between two teams battling for a playoff spot.
Yeah, people want to go and have, cheer and have fun. And, when Jets are scoring 2 goals, and I think there's a lot of excitement, a big standing O for Nino Niederreiter as well, Huss, and he's banging around, with 5 hits, as we mentioned, including a big one there. So, I think gets people into the game, and that atmosphere. We remember what it was like early in the season when the Jets were winning a lot at home, and of course past years, how great it's been in the past. So, when you score early and get the 2-goal lead, they get up and makes it a lot more fun, I think, for everyone involved. So, shout out to the fans who were at the game last night, Hustler. A big, nice Tuesday tilt.
Yeah, no, it was fun, as I said. I mean, it was an entertaining game. There was lots to digest at both ends. Obviously, the 1 point, though, better than 0, but this team needs a couple on a regular basis right now to solidify this playoff spot. One more before we get to Murat. Josh Morrissey did talk about the upcoming trade deadline and how that's resonating within the room.
Yeah, obviously, those decisions are out of our hands, and I think I've been in the league long enough to know you can just control what you can and do what you do every day. But of course, it's nice to have that faith from an organization. If we don't do anything, I have a ton of faith in our locker room here, and the guys that have gotten us to this point, and the addition of Nino. So we'll see what happens, I guess, in the next few days. But either way, I've got a lot of faith in our team, and just want to build off the effort level tonight.
All right, there's Josh Morrissey, who was the Jet star of the show last night. Obviously, Andrei Kopitar with 4 goals at the top of that list as well from the visitors' side of things. All right, Murat is going to join us right away. Kerri Einarson a little later on in the program today. Of course, Carey coming off her 4th straight Scotties win, heading to the World Championships in a few weeks. And we've got some fun curling coverage coming up on Winnipeg Sports Talk as well. One of the big Grand Slam events we'll tell you about coming up in the weeks to come on WST. Of course, when we're talking curling and, of course, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as well, we do it for our friends at Princess Auto, great supporters of both the roaring game from coast to coast and the blue and gold, and, of course, Winnipeg Sports Talk as well. Princess Auto is the place where you'll find the best deals and the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Check them out at one of 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, or you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Thirsty folks? Well, everyone needs water, and when it comes to water products and services in Winnipeg, the family-owned Culligan team has been there for Manitobans for pushing 7 decades right now. They've got it all. Water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, home systems, drinking water systems, and citywide water delivery services, and commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Pop down and see them at 1200 Sargent Avenue. You can give them a call at 204-694-5180. And check them out online at drinkculligan.com. And while we've got a very busy weekend for the local hockey squad taking on the Oilers in Edmonton and then back in Winnipeg, it's also a busy, busy weekend downtown at the Winnipeg Whiskey Festival, which is presented by title sponsor and great sponsors of ours, Canadian Club. Friday night is sold out right now. But you can still get in for an amazing evening on Saturday night. And, of course, proceeds from the Winnipeg Whiskey Festival go to support the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame. Big thanks to Canadian Club for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And, of course, the official spirit of the Blue Bombers as well. All right, we'll talk a little curling later on with Kerri Einarson. Right now, though, let's welcome in Murat from The Athletic. And, Murat, we were expecting or hoping to see a response from the Winnipeg Jets last night. A little bit more emotion, certainly more impact. We got it, and kind of have to start with the performance of Josh Morrissey, especially in that first period. What did you think about the way the team came out and the way he, again, was the guy that sort of stepped up for the Winnipeg Jets?
I think it finally showed us a Winnipeg Jets team that could come from right from puck drop and come and do the right things that they'd been talking about for the previous days. I know that road trip had gotten long and things hadn't been successful. That game against Colorado was just awful. They said that they liked some things against the Islanders. That was supposed to be the pushback after Friday was supposed to be the pushback. But last night, you actually saw it. And you had guys crashing the crease, like Mark Scheifele hacking and whacking away on what became Josh Morrissey's first goal. But that whole play is Morrissey losing Victor Arvidsson at the line, attacking the offensive zone, and crashing the crease to make that goal happen. His rocket of a shot for his second goal after a really nice pass from Dylan DeMello. I mean, the guy came to play, and he has so many times this season when the Winnipeg Jets need an emotional lift, he's at the forefront of it. So, yeah, absolutely. And then he adds 2 assists later in the game as well. You needed a 5th point from him if you were going to get a win last night if you were the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, going into the game, and obviously we've been talking about it with fans for the last couple days heading into last night. We wanted to see a result. We wanted to see a response from the team because they'd seem like, from my perspective, it seems like this is almost has been like a crisis of confidence. And I'm not sure that last night completely erases everything, but it is a start. And in some ways, playing the way they did, but not getting the full 2 points, I think shows just how committed they need to be every shift, every period going forth, because essentially the playoffs are on right now in the West and right now in the Central Division for the Jets.
And nothing is promised to anybody. Good first half, who cares? You're in, tied for that wild card spot. It's going to be that way. And you can play a really good game for 99% of it. Or heck, you could even, if you wanted to give the credit to the Jets, despite giving up 2-2-goal leads, and say they played close to the way that they want to, well, sometimes you don't win, even when you're doing that. And that's the situation that Winnipeg is in. They have to stay playing exactly that way and better if they're going to turn that into a win. I don't really fault them for a whole lot of their misery last night. There are some plays I like, some plays I didn't like, but it was a huge step forward where I would actually look at that. They said after the Islanders game, hey, there's some things we liked, and maybe to their expert eyes there were things to like. For me, it took last night to actually kind of get on board with that and say, well, there are pieces of Winnipeg's game that could be successful. They just need more of that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was in the building on Friday and Sunday, and there wasn't a lot to like. I think we can all agree on that. And Bones himself said, coming back into the practice on Monday, that, he didn't want to say something, that, he was hot right there. And, there was a lot going on around the hockey club, but it has been an interesting departure from, the bonus that we heard for the first 45 to 50 games. And I think, Murat, I'm interested in your perspective on this. It really does seem to me that the way Bones has changed his tone and maybe tackled the problems of the club, at least publicly, a little bit differently, I think also speaks to just where the headspace of this team has been over the course of this slump.
I mean, I have time for that. And, in your last question, Huss, you referenced confidence. And when things are going poorly for the Jets, man, does it look like they're not a confident team. And you could see moments over the weekend where guys who usually make plays like automatic would look up, seem to scan the ice. They didn't see what they wanted. Their feet stopped moving. They pass into nowhere. Like there are plays that the Winnipeg Jets make routinely for the first 40, 45 games of the season that, over the weekend you didn't see. And for me, confidence probably has a lot to do with that. Now, of course, Friday, look at the Bronx cheers, the tension in the crowd as well, all of that sort of stuff. And I think when Bowness came out on Friday after the Colorado game, and he didn't rip the team, but certainly he was critical of it. I think that between that, the fan response, a general feeling amongst the group, like they can't go to that well every time. I don't think that they, I'm not going to say they didn't appreciate the coach's words, because they certainly would have heard those things inside as well. But I don't think they would have appreciated hearing him like that every single day during this, because they need a different look at a different set of problem solving to get out of it. And so I think Bowness was really conscientious about backing off the public critique, because then he does that, all of the papers and myself write the negative article, all that sort of stuff, and the cloud builds and builds and builds. And I think that they just need to let some air out about that whole negativity.
Now, in the background, or maybe not even the background, right in front of our face, the National Hockey League landscape is changing every 10 minutes, it seems, with another big deal. 2-3 weeks ago, I think we all thought that this was going to be a very aggressive team that looked to add and give themselves the best chance to really compete and make some noise in the playoffs. I'm not sure that that's entirely changed, Murat, but I have to ask you, what do you think the recent struggles of this club, how has that resonated within the general manager's office? And has that maybe changed the way they're looking at this deadline, considering the way the team has played, which unfortunately is somewhat similar to other seasons' second half swoons?
Yeah, I mean, to be a fly on the wall in Chevy's office right now, because the tension has to be building. I think at the end of the day, the decisions are the same, but the emotions around them are going to be so complex and so heavy, because the biggest thing that you look at if you're looking at roster building for the Winnipeg Jets is 2024 and all of the misery that could theoretically come with that. We've talked it to death. UFA eligibility for Scheifele, for Connor Hellebuck, the guy that is probably why they're where they are for how many of the last several years. For Blake Wheeler as well, Dylan DeMello, Brendan Dillon, I believe. And then, of course, Pierre-Luc Dubois has the eligibility to join them if he's not traded or extended before then. So there's a lot going on, which essentially, to me, makes this the last push. Because if you get to next year and you have these pending unrestricted free agents, you're not going to walk them to free agency without doing something. I mean, the decisions have to happen now. And that's why Nino Niederreiter is valuable, because he helps this year and next year. I don't think you can go pure rental unless you really believe that you're going all in this season. So, okay, they play well for the first half of the season, and that makes sense to do. They've shown a willingness to spend to the cap many times. And despite what the reputation is, during the season, Kevin Cheveldayoff has made trades every deadline. He's willing to add all of that. He's done that before. And then this crumble, this thing that's going to give fans flashbacks to last year at worst, or maybe 2019 at best, where they stumbled down the block and then they had to play against St. Louis, who was on fire, and all of a sudden a good season goes all for naught. I mean, I still think at the end of the day, you look at 2024 and what's coming and you say, well, we've got to add to the best of our ability. We have to use the cap space that we have. It's just a much more difficult proposition. And maybe there's a couple of your top prospects you're not willing to give away, but I still think they have to go for it, or else what happens next?
You know, I mean, I will admit, and I've mentioned this on the show, I wasn't sure that, you know, the recent play of the Winnipeg Jets might add a whole nother option for management going into the deadline that we wouldn't have even considered 2 or 3 weeks ago. And that was, you know, maybe taking advantage of the market right now to really make a move that's not just adding to the core, but essentially significantly shaking up the core, potentially with one of those players that does have an expiry date at the end of their contract. And I mean, the prices, I'm sure you've noticed that. I mean, there has been some massive swings around the National Hockey League, and with all of those players gone, although many of the assets already traded as well. I mean, I did wonder aloud if maybe Kevin Cheveldayoff was thinking about taking a very different route coming into Friday. I'm not sure whether they would ever admit to that, and I guess we'll find out what happens come Friday. But this was a situation that I didn't think we'd be talking about, even a possibility 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Well, you know, I completely understand the theory, because if you don't, I don't want to say don't believe in this team, but I think that's it. Maybe that's just the simplest way to say it. If you don't think that this is it for them, then maybe you consider a sell, because you're right, Huss. The prices have been incredible for some players, not for everybody. A second for Niederreiter is a great bit of business if you're the Winnipeg Jets,
Big
but
time.
a lot of what the Timo Meier, that's a fair value there. Tanner Jeannot, I mean, imagine that. So many of the other players that you've seen moved. So if you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, Pierre-Luc Dubois is probably not going to sign here this summer, or not a long-term deal anyway. That's something we've got to sort out. Can you completely shift the foundation and use, well, hey, at least Timo Meier, or kind of in the range of Timo Meier as the baseline for a deal? I mean, it's one of those things that you hear speculation about. And, it's something that, like, I've asked people about, to be completely honest. I've asked people, like, hey, this sounds a little bit silly, but could that be something that's on the table? And of course, I haven't been able to, I don't know yes or no on either way, but it's one of those things that becomes a conversation that you have. I don't anticipate it. I don't think that that's what's going to happen, but if the Jets know more than we do when they decide that a problem is kind of within the room, or the call is coming within the house, so to speak, well, then it's on them to take care of business that way.
Well, listen, I mean, I think it is fun for us to talk about, but I don't think there's any way that those thoughts could not at least be considered by the team where they are right now. Because, I mean, while the first half of the season was great and it's been ugly lately, everything that Kevin Cheveldayoff does this season also has the background of the impending changes that are inevitable here with this team. And as I said, I mean, I think I'm sort of with you. I mean, I don't think we'll see any earth-shattering moves, but I got to tell you, the way the team has played, I think, has almost forced them to consider it. And I mean, maybe in some ways it foreshadows more movement when we get to the off season. As far as the trades go, I've been wanting to ask you this for the last couple of days, and I've been looking forward to you to come on, because we've seen a ton of players go, and we can't go through all of them. But the Tanner Jeannot deal was fascinating in that you're getting Cal Foote, a first-round pick, a first, second, third, fourth, and fifth round selection. I mean, a huge draft capital given up by a team that, let's face it, knows what they are doing, having won the East for the last 3 years. What does that say about the game right now? and how important those physical, gritty players, for lack of a better term, are at playoffs, that Tampa was willing to give up that sort of a haul for Tanner Jeannot?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I have a few different kind of philosophies on it. I don't know if that's the right word, but I tend to think that when an organization or a person has a lot of success solving problems in a particular way and things go spectacularly well for them, as the Tampa Bay Lightning can say when they've added players in the past, Nick Paul scores big goals, Blake Coleman part of a cup, they add grit, all of those sorts of things. And they've had success doing that with this player type. I think that, one, it shows that this was a need that they've identified year in, year out, that this is something that adds them another element to their game. And then two, they've seen it pay off. They've seen it pay them. And I think that I've seen lots of examples of that in hockey, like Paul Maurice, go back to Connor Scheifele-Wheeler. They were the best when the team was the best. You go to what you've seen work, I think, and there's an emotional component to that. But, in that case, Stanley Cup emotion, I think there's a little bit of proof there as well. The other thing is, I look at some of these contending teams, and, I don't think Colorado has a second-round draft pick for the next 4 years at this point or what have you. Tampa Bay's willing to give up draft capital. And if you look at a first-round pick from the Tampa Bay Lightning, call that, I don't know, in their dreams, the 31st or 32nd pick in the draft, and then the second, et cetera, all the way through that. And you look at a draft pick probability curve of how good those players are going to be. When you're drafting that far back, even a first-round pick might not be worth as much as we think that it is. It may be that Tanner Jeannot is, in fact, worth that. It may be that to a Colorado, the second-round picks are a currency that the trade market values more than give them an actual chance to get those qualities of players. There might be an analytical movement to that as well in terms of the draft quality that goes along with these deals.
Well, I think from the price being paid, it speaks to the way they feel about their team right now and those picks. But the other thing that just stands out to me, and I think we've seen things go somewhat in cycles in the National Hockey League, but the success of teams like the Lightning and the moves some of these other teams are making show that, yeah, you need to have skill, you need to be able to score goals, you need to be able to stop the puck. But come playoff time, if you're going to survive 4 rounds in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you need Tanner Jeannots, and those players are a premium right now on the market.
Yeah, it may speak to that in terms of why he got so much that folks were scratching their heads. I'm not sure if the price is as horribly high as it looks offhand, but I agree with you there. And even, I mentioned analytics a second ago. There's no real proof that the amount of goals or location of goals changes or penalty minutes change so much that, that's stuff that you typically hear in terms of old school hockey think. But there is, and I've seen a Dom Luszczyszyn article about this, there is some correlation with size and success in the playoffs. If you want to go the nerdy angle of it, there is a little bit of correlation with size and success in terms of maintaining an individual player's production. So, we've seen it with our eyes. It looks harder to get to the dirty areas. It looks harder to get to the slot, the crease. The board battles get more intense, all of that. Does that translate to something? Well, yeah, even the nerds agree there's at least a little bit of something there. And if Tanner Jeannot can do it for Tampa Bay, who thinks that they're ready to go through an incredibly deep East all over again, well, then, power to them. And I think that, speaking locally as well, Niederreiter is one of the few players on his current team, the Winnipeg Jets, who does that kind of game as well.
No, it is a great point. By the way, pushing 450 in the chat today. Great to see everyone out. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that red subscribe button, folks. And if you would be so kind to give a thumbs up as well, helps us spread the channel. And if you've just popped by and are new around here, great to have you with us. We're live on Winnipeg Sports Talk every Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. Central. And you can also pick up the audio podcast available just in time for your drive home in the afternoon. Search Winnipeg Sports Talk wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Murat, has there been a trade that shocked you more than others? Has anything really stood out to you other than just the amount of trades that have been made and how aggressive these teams in the East in particular have been?
The sheer volume of it, to be sure. The way that it's all stacked to the Eastern Conference, where a conference that already looks like it's the superior one of the two right now. They're all seeming to be in an arms race of some kind. I think Timo Meier and the Devils made a lot of sense, to be honest. And, I reported on Friday night, and, I understood that Timo Meier had told the Jets that, he was unlikely to extend, and that pulled the Jets out of that conversation. Well, one of the interesting things for me was I think that Timo Meier has told a few people that, and the New Jersey Devils would have made their pitch and their acquisition without worrying about that. They didn't necessarily care about that, whereas Winnipeg did. So I think that maybe some of what we're learning about the local team throughout the process as well, I think is particularly interesting. That Jonathan Quick trade last night, where it seems like Columbus is already trying to pivot and make another move, maybe that's a trend that we should all be paying attention to, is how much of this stuff is happening early so people can wheel and deal with the assets that they've acquired in the days between their initial move and the deadline itself.
No, it is a great point. And I mean, I've been joking with Reem. I mean, the guy that's the most rattled about all of this is James Duthie and the guys that are going to need to be tap dancing for 8 hours on Friday as they do their extended trade deadline coverage, because so many of the players that have been on this list have already moved. But I'm not sure that we won't see another flurry. I don't think it'll be as big names and as maybe as impactful players, but it still seems that there's a lot of work being done. A number of teams have made multiple trades, and we're hearing that these GMs aren't finished yet.
Yeah. I mean, Rick Bowness made the same joke essentially today when we were just talking to him that, the guys that are doing the TV hosting on Friday, they hate this. They'll be running out of things to talk about. And I don't think that there'll be nothing to talk about, that's for sure. But with enormous names off the board, Timo Meier, Patrick Kane, you go down, right? The only obvious one, I suppose, would be Jacob Chychrun, who is a huge name on defense with time on his contract yet. That would be an exciting moment. And then, hey, maybe there's some surprises that we don't know about as well as these teams get creative and get desperate in an attempt to build things up before deadline day and deadline hour.
Chychrun's retiring as a Coyote. We've been talking about him for a year and a half being traded. He's never getting traded, folks. Let's move on that. Obviously, I'm tongue in cheek. We'll see what happens. Hey, before we go, you mentioned talking to Bowness. First of all, how was practice? What did it look like? What was the vibe you were feeling while observing the squad back on the ice today?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, the intensity was maybe not as much as yesterday and the day before kind of business. I think that, it wasn't a day off by any stretch, but there was a lot of special teams work. There were some rushes. Rick Bowness said that his focus was just on different ways to get the puck moving and then getting it to the net. Special teams, it was interesting. The power play didn't look particularly dangerous, even in practice form. Rick Bowness was asked about that. He said, well, also, guys, we're not trying to shoot through the shin pads of our own players. We're focused more on the puck movement. But it was kind of interesting to watch as the various units didn't light it up, so to speak. But I think it was just them, again, trying to focus in on the get the puck to the net message and hammer that home, which has been the focus of the last few days. And finally with, Scheifele hacking and whacking on the doorstep, Morgan Barron doing the same thing, Niederreiter, cruising through the slot, boxing out, doing all that sort of stuff. You started to see that from the Jets, and they got paid for it. They scored because of it last night. So I think that continues to be the message from Rick Bowness.
What was the message after practice? How was Bones feeling, and what did you guys gather from the head coach coming off the shootout loss last night?
Yeah, I think that they're taking positives. They believe that there were positives there. There's some construction going on in a neighboring room, so I can sincerely say I didn't hear every word that Rick Bowness said. But yeah, there was some discussion of the trade deadline where, he just reiterated faith in his players, and if somebody does come in, then great. But, that sort of talk as well. Mason Appleton is being evaluated today, so further updates as to whether he's short-term or long-term or what have you, they're going to learn that soon. Pierre-Luc Dubois day-to-day, so still possible for the weekend.
Yeah, well, and listen, I mean, I think it speaks to whatever Dubois is dealing. I mean, for him to miss a game of that magnitude last night, I'm not sure we can count on him getting back right away, but it sure would be nice to see him in a lineup. when they will certainly need him going up against the Edmonton Oilers in those back-to-back games on Friday and Saturday. Looking forward to having your colleague, James Myrtle, on the program tomorrow. We'll be talking a little bit about, obviously, his thoughts on the Jets and the rest of the league, but very busy week for you and the athletic team going into Friday, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, have fun with Myrtle, and so much has happened. So much is to be written about all the trades. But there's kind of one plug I want to make. I know folks want the rumors and the trades, but today I put out a story about kind of a behind-the-scenes day in the life of Dylan DeMello, the day he got traded for Erik Karlsson. And you'll remember that Brendan Dillon was also a Shark at the time. Well, it turns out that they were good buds, and when Dylan DeMello needed some help on the day, Brendan Dillon was there for him. And the two of them talked to me both about just the complicated emotions that go into that. And if you like behind the scenes stories of, what happens to the dog, the furniture, how do you find a place to live, all that sort of stuff, that's up at The Athletic today, and I hope folks check that out.
Cannot wait to read it. Murat, thanks so much. Enjoy the next few days. Never a dull moment around this hockey club, and we'll catch up next week when the dust is settled on this trade deadline and the team hits the road.
Right on, Huss. Good talking.
Thanks so much. There is a Murat Atesh of The Athletic. Make sure you're subscribed and check out all of Murat's great work covering the Winnipeg Jets at The Athletic. All right. We are going to talk to the queen of Canadian curling, Kerri Einarson, coming up in just a second. We will cheers Kerri with Winnipeg's favorite local brew, the 1919 from Little Brown Jug. If you haven't already, pop down and check them out at William Avenue in the Exchange. Just an amazing place to meet friends for a couple of great beers, Winnipeg's finest. And of course, you can pick up the new beers in the Good Times Variety Pack at your local Manitoba liquor marts or beer store. 1919 and more, wherever you sell great beer. And if you're looking, you can usually find 1919 on tap at most fine bars and restaurants here in the city of Winnipeg. And a big hat tip to our pal Nick and Nikki DQ for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. 4 locations in Winnipeg and southern Manitoba, the DQ in Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, DQ St. Anne's. Pop by, grab a flamethrower burger, maybe some chicken fingers, a Blizzard too. Great take-home ice cream novelties. And, of course, if you've got a party coming up, how about an ice cream cake or maybe even a DQ Blizzard cake to spice up the festivities? If you do want to order a custom cake, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. They'll make it for you as however you want, and it'll be ready to pick up quick and easy at any of the 4 Nick and Nikki DQs. All right, we will get to what's happening tonight in the National Hockey League in a minute on the Coolbet lines before the top of the hour. But right now, let's welcome in, fresh off her 4th consecutive Scotties championship, Kerri Einarson. 4 in a row, Scotties champ. Kerri, what's going on? Welcome back to Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I remember we spoke last year after your 3rd straight, and it was a very different one just because of everything we'd been through the pandemic. But how does it feel? I mean, it's somewhat old hat, but I'm sure this never gets old.
Oh, it doesn't get old at all. You're only on top for so long, so you got to take advantage while you can. So we're just super excited, and we can't wait to head to Sweden.
Well, let's go back to last week in Kamloops. I mean, you came in as the 3-time defending champs, but man, it was an incredible field. Some would say the best field that they've ever had. You rolled through the round robin, took a loss early on in the playoffs, and then never lost again. I mean, when you look back, what will you remember about the journey that your team took to the final and then obviously winning it?
Yeah, we did the same thing last year. We don't like to go through this thing undefeated. It's definitely better to lose a game early, but we didn't think that we would go undefeated through this. It's a very tough field, and it was definitely one of the hardest that I've ever played in. So, I'm extremely excited that we could be in the record books for 4 in a row.
Obviously you guys did make history, and I mean, what a final. I mean, for Manitoba curling fans to have your team on the verge of history, Jen Jones and the incredible resume she has. I mean, you're not unfamiliar foes, but when it comes to curling in Canada and right here in the heart in Manitoba, this was the final I think that a lot of people wanted to see, and man, it delivered on both sides.
Yeah, I heard the viewers of this game it was pretty high. So I think this is what a lot of people wanted to see as well. Two Manitoba teams going at it in the Scotties final, and it was a great game up until the ninth end, and we felt very, very much in control that whole entire game, and we were playing really well. So and so were they. But it was the ninth end was the turning point.
How was this one different than the other three? And certainly maybe speak to the fact that you guys are getting a little more used to playing in front of fans again.
Yeah, this one's definitely different, that we had all of our family and friends there, just like in Moose Jaw. So it was pretty special moment. And it was one of the best ones, I would say. And, when you win your fourth in a row, to be up in the records with Colleen Jones, this is something I never, ever thought that myself and my team would accomplish. And to do that it's pretty amazing.
Well, and you did it by beating Jen Jones, one of the greats of all time in the game. Being a Manitoba rink, you've got an incredible history with Jen. And, we were talking off air beforehand. I mean, it took some hard lessons for a long time to finally get over that hump. I mean, what's it like playing against Jen? And maybe give our listeners a little bit of a background into, how many hard nights you guys had against her teams in the past. And obviously, I'm sure that makes it even more sweet to take it down in such a fashion in the biggest event of the year.
Yeah. I've had a hard time beating Jen over the years. It took me like 20 times to finally beat her. So, but she's one of the legends of curling, and watching her win numerous times is something that I knew I wanted to do too. And to do that, I knew I had to work hard, and she set the bar high for us Manitobans. If we wanted to beat her and get out of Manitoba, we had to work hard for it. And that's what myself and my team have done over the years. And that final kind of brought me back to 2018 when her and Shannon beat us in the final. So I had to think of payback. Except for Shannon was on my team this time.
No doubt. I mean, you mentioned Shannon. I mean, tell us a little bit about the contributions of the other members of your team. I mean, obviously, sometimes we focus on the skip, but I mean, you guys have such an incredible team. And going into this year with all of the shakeups around and the movement, your team was the one that stayed together. And it seems like you guys have not missed a beat at any point this season.
Yeah, my team is just absolutely unbelievable. The work ethic that we all put into the game on and off the ice, and Brianne being pregnant and just being a machine out there. It's pretty amazing to see. And Shannon's just an overall shot maker. Her energy she brings, her positive attitude. And Val is she knows the game so well. She's and supports me in every single way that I need. And she's an awesome shot maker too. So when this team formed, I knew we'd be good. And I knew that we all had the same goals, and we just had to keep putting in that hard work.
You had a team that, I mean, when you brought everybody together, I mean, everyone had skipped before. And I think there was a lot of people that wondered how this would work. What are the keys to the continued success of you guys as teammates and working together in the unit that has, done it 4 times in a row now?
Well, the thing we don't get complacent. We don't just say, oh, okay, well, or we're winning, whatever. But we still work hard at it, and we always want to be the best. And we think of ways and different strategies and things like that we can implement and to make us even better. So we're always striving to be the best. And and I think that's what makes this team so special. And I know a lot of people didn't think that 4 skips could come together, but you're seeing it a lot now. You're seeing skips go to thirds and things like that. And I think we kind of started a trend.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, we always talk about sports, pro sports becoming somewhat of a copycat league. And if you're going to copy someone, copy Einarson team because of what you guys have done so far. Hey, you mentioned Brienne. I mean, you're a mom. What must it be like to be playing at that stage of pregnancy? And how impressive was her performance and what she did for your team, despite dealing with a lot of things off the ice?
Well, I haven't played pregnant before, but I'm sure it's very uncomfortable. And Brienne was amazing. She never complained once. She just pushed through any type of difficulty she was having. We never heard a complaint from her. So she played outstanding all week. And I gave her my MVP award after the game because I think she was the most valuable player on our team, and she deserved that award.
Kerri Einarson's with us, fresh off a 4th consecutive Scotties championship. How was Sunday night in Kamloops? What'd you guys do to celebrate?
Well, we had so much paperwork to do afterwards, and by the time we were done that, it was like almost 11 o'clock. So we went and met our family for a couple of drinks and some appies, but then we had to catch a flight at 4 o'clock in the morning. We didn't plan that very well.
You should be used to this by now. Late flight the next day on Monday.
I know, right?
What paperwork do you have to do after winning?
You got to fill out some stuff too, like for traveling and things like that, and some bio stuff, and so that takes up quite a bit of your time.
You need to let Reed do that. Isn't that what the coach is there for? I joke about this. We had Reed on kind of checking in on you guys in the middle of the event. He's a great friend of the program, a great curler in his own right. But how has he helped your team?
Oh, he's been a real asset to our team. He brings so much, like even with strategy and off ice, just making us laugh and having a drink after the game, keeping things light. And we love having him a part of this team. And when he calls a timeout, he's very to the point and put the broom down and just make the shot. So, and I love having that.
Now, Kerri, I remember in your interview with, I believe, TSN after you won, you'd mentioned that you've never been to Sweden. Another run at the Worlds. I'm sure that's exciting right now. That now that you've done this, you've sort of been there before. What's the focus going into the trip out to Sweden?
Yeah, we haven't been to Sweden, so we're super excited to go there and have our family and friends in the stands. And right now our focus is we want to bring gold back to Canada, and that's something we're striving for. So I know we're going to have to be really good when we're there because there's so many great teams. We've been pretty consistent throughout our season this year. So we're just going to keep working hard and hopefully we can put it together and bring gold back.
I mean, listen, since curling's been an Olympic sport, we've seen the game grow around the world. But how would you compare the competition at the Worlds to the meat grinder that you just went through to become Canadian champions again?
Well, the competition at the Scotties is tough. It's not easy at all. So it definitely prepares you for Worlds. And all the Worlds teams, they're really good. As we've known over the last few years that last year it was kind of in our hands and we let it slip away. This year we don't want to do that again. So we're going to learn from that and be better and prepared for that.
Kerri Einarson with us. What was the welcome like when you got back on home turf in Manitoba?
Oh, it was so nice. We had a bagpiper piping us off. We haven't had that yet because of COVID. And we had some of the media and our family were down at the bottom. So that was really nice to see.
Well, I can tell you the entire province is fired up. I mean, it couldn't have been more exciting for Manitoba curling fans to see you. And I mean, the other teams that were there as well. Of course, finishing up with your team going up against Jen's team and a new team as well with another. I mean, just maybe quickly on that new team. And we know what Jen's done, but man, those young girls that are playing now with Jennifer, I mean, it really is an exciting time for Manitoba curling. And I can't imagine a better way to finish up the Scotties.
Oh, for sure. That team is, they're great team, great shooters. They're super young. And it reminded me of 2018 when it was my first Scotties and I was playing Jen, and it was heartbreaking. Like, I saw the girls crying afterwards, but that was me quite a few years ago. So I know what they were going through.
So, Kerri, you and the team are off to Sweden on the 12th of March. What's up for the next couple of weeks for you before you head out?
Yeah, I think my curling club's going to have something for me on Friday and just enjoy the moment. And then next week, I'm going to get right back into it and start throwing and practicing and Reed's at the Briar. So we'll be just the three of us, and then Val's in Edmonton. So we're leaving on the 12th, and then we're going to train for a few days before the event starts.
Well, let's book another visit on Winnipeg Sports Talk, talking about a gold medal at the Worlds in a few weeks. How does that sound?
Oh, that would be amazing.
Kerri, thanks so much. Congratulations again. Everyone's so fired up for you and can't wait to see what you and your team is able to do at the World Championships.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
All right, four-time defending champ Kerri Einarson of Gimli joining us on WST. What a treat that was. And I think I'm already booking a return visit for Kerri coming back after the Worlds, hopefully with a gold medal. What a performance and what an event that was. Of course, the Briar gets going this week. We'll touch on that in the Coolbet lines in the next couple days. And we will have some picks tomorrow in the Lock Shop when Dusty and I fire it up. Speaking of the Lock Shop and Coolbet, Remo, let's get to the Coolbet lines for tonight. And pretty busy Wednesday night, 6 games and a couple of really, really interesting matchups. We'll get a chance to see what the Oilers look like after the Ekholm deal, taking on the Leafs tonight. The Leafs a slight home favorite at -116, Edmonton at -102. Heck of a night to see these two Canadian teams go head-to-head, considering the Oilers-Jets matchups on Friday and Saturday in Edmonton and Winnipeg, respectively.
Oh, yeah. I might have to tune in. That is a really good game. I'm curious how Edmonton will stack up against Toronto. Toronto with they made like 3 trades within like 40 minutes. And I think it was David Alter asked Kyle Dubas, like, so are you done? And he kind of just laughed. So there's more coming. We're not sure from Toronto. So I'm curious what their new look. But now the take is, did Toronto trade too much of the roster? Do they change too much? So I'm very curious. Against Edmonton, they're good, but their bottom scoring isn't really there. But does that matter when you have Connor McDavid on a 150-point pace? So I'll tune in. And then, some other games too as well, Teddy. This Carolina-Vegas, that's an interesting one later on. And Devils-Colorado too. I know the Rangers are playing. I don't think Kane is going to play for the Rangers tonight, but he should be in the lineup.
I'm not sure
tomorrow.
that trade's even officially been done yet. Has it? I mean, this has something to do with the salary cap.
I think they're like
gotta wait
10K.
a certain amount of time.
They're like 10K over or something. They got to wait for another day to accrue.
But the Rangers are in Philly. Rangers a -211 favorite against the Flyers. We mentioned that Leafs-Oilers game. A lot of Jet fans might hold their nose and be cheering for Toronto, considering the Jets and Oilers are in a dead heat at 72 points through 61 games. We can all agree, go Coyotes go. The Coyotes are in Dallas, where the Dallas Stars have lost a couple games as of late that you wouldn't expect them to do, blowing a 3-0 lead at home against the Chicago Blackhawks. Maybe the Coyotes can pull a miracle. That being said, if you can get them and they win, plus 325 is a big underdog. Stars -410. And you mentioned this Devils-Avs game tonight, Remo. A straight-up pick'em, -108 on each side. I'm not betting against the Avalanche anytime soon right now. They are on a heater, 6 wins in a row. And, of course, New Jersey doesn't have Timo Meier yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. They are hot. I'm assuming Lars Eller won't be available, but we'll wait and see. They did trade for him earlier today for a 2025 second-round pick, and Colorado just went over Vegas the other day. Yeah, they're at home. I don't know. There's some altitude there, I think, that they get the advantage of. I don't think it's talked about enough, Huss. So I would go with Colorado there on the pick 'em.
Oh, the altitude factor. I like that. I like that. I think that's going to be my daily pick for the folks over at Coolbet. We'll fire that one out a little later on this afternoon. Caps are in Anaheim to take on the Ducks. Washington a -204 favorite. And you mentioned this game, another great one, 9 p.m. start. The Carolina Hurricanes, a -145 favorite in Vegas to take on the Golden Knights. Knights not home underdogs very often, but they are tonight. Vegas shut out in their last game against the Avalanche, and not getting any easier with one of the beasts of the East coming into Sin City.
Oh, and they had some nice videos from Carolina. Jesse Puljujarvi joining the team, so that's their move. I'm curious if Carolina is going to do more. I'm not sure what they would add. That was a good ad for them, but do they trade? I don't even know what their first round pick situation is, but I feel like that's a team that should be trying to match what everyone else is doing in Carolina. So that's a pretty good match. And as far as Vegas, they tweeted out a video of their new hot acquisition, Ivan Barbashev. But the other one, Kevin Weeks tweeting out, he didn't say. David Pagnotta tweeted that Vegas might be interested in John Quick because they've had all these goalie injuries, and Kevin Weeks did tweet out that keep an eye on John Quick for, he could be on the move to a buyer from Columbus.
Yeah, we'll touch on that in just a second to see if there's been any other trades happening during this the program. Of course, if you haven't played a Coolbet before, use the promo code WST on your first deposit for a 100% bonus up to $200 when you sign up over at Coolbet. And tomorrow, big show in the Lock Shop. Today's Lock Shop made our golf picks for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Tomorrow, lots of hockey, and I will make my Briar selections as well before things get going on Friday. Now, Joey in chat has mentioned this a couple times. I'm going to mention this out. The champions of the Power Toboggan Racing in Beausejour, Manitoba this weekend. I'll be honest. I am not familiar with power toboggans, Remo, but I have to admit I'm somewhat intrigued. It is essentially like a sled on a toboggan, or how exactly does that work? I think it's just like a snowmobile. Isn't that what it is? That's what it looks like to me. It has this sick name like Power Toboggan, and I thought I was gonna see like some, what I used to run. I don't guess it does kind of look like a GT racer. I don't know. I don't really know what it is, Huss, but. Well, out in Beausejour this week, if you want to check it out, the Canadian Championships, 4th and 5th out in Beausejour. Power toboggans. Listen, I think I could get into that. Maybe they can hook us up. We could do a Huss versus Remis power toboggan race at some point for some WST content.
Oh my God, I don't know if I'd be able to handle on those. Like, I would need some serious protection. This is just showing this video here. It looks legit. It looks like a GT racer, but like major power behind that. Remember the Brett Hull poster? Of course, everyone used to have that.
All right, listen. Before we go, let's just quickly check out the ever diminishing trade bait boards or trade targets, however you want to call it. The one guy that we've been talking about, people have been talking about for a long time, is Jacob Chychrun. He sits firmly at number 1 on the trade bait board. But, man, it's slim pickings throughout the rest. I mean, Bertuzzi's there now. JVR from Philly. You got a couple first-round picks from Columbus and St. Louis. And I am interested to see whether the Habs are able to get their price for Joel Edmondson. We saw Luke Shen go for a 3rd rounder. Is it in that neighborhood potentially? And who will be that guy? But, man, it's slim pickings, and there's a whole bunch of names on this list. I think they're just throwing on the list because there's nobody left from the original list.
Okay, here. I said, does Carolina have a first-round pick? Autoplay video getaway. Carolina's first-round pick. There you go. They're number 4 on the list. We love non-player items. There it is, St. Louis's first-round pick. Which one? They have 3 of them. And the 9th spot Any other? Is Arizona's cap space going to be on there at any point? I don't see that on there. It's been used up a lot. We did have Kulikov and Klingberg held out. Kulikov's in at number 20. And is Klingberg on there? I'm not sure. Some other notes. Max Domi comes in at 11. He's mentioned here a lot. Kevin Weeks said, there's a lot of teams interested, but maybe he signs an extension because it's worked out so well for him in Chicago. And Chicago does actually need to field a roster. They can't just put out nobody and lose games. Dylan Larkin, I don't know if he was on before, but yeah, he signed today. Was $69.6 million contract.
8.7 a year AAV.
Yeah, and so then there are people in chat saying, well, that would be comparable for Dubois. And I haven't looked closely, but I would think would be somewhere around there. And I said, Dubois, for the first 40 games, he was a $10 million player, but his last 20 has not been as good. He is, he has been injured right now. I don't know how much that affects things, and we'll have to wait and see if he's even in the lineup for the next game. So that was one. As far as goalies, yeah, Cam Talbot in Ottawa is the highest goalie.
Well, maybe Quick should be on that list now. They need to update it because then there have been a number of reports. You just mentioned this, that the Kings or the Blue Jackets are going to try to do right by Jonathan Quick. But man, with that salary, we know how tight many teams are when it comes to cap. Not sure whether they'll be able to pull that off. I'm just over at Daily Faceoff and checking out Frank's trade target lists.
And
it's interesting, a guy I don't think is on the TSN list, but is number 3 on Frank's. And actually, I guess technically number 2 after Gavrikov was traded is Kevin Hayes of the Philadelphia Flyers. 3 more seasons at 7.142. As much as he likes being a Flyer, I can imagine that Hayes might love the opportunity to go somewhere, play in the playoffs, and maybe get away from Torts as well in the process.
The Jets like guys with term, so let's bring him home, Kevin Hayes. I'll never forget Brandon.
Bring him home.
Brandon Rookie on here saying a couple weeks ago, yeah, bring him home, and my immediate thought was the Jets, but he's actually talking about Boston, and I don't think, although maybe Boston would be a fit in the summer after what Bergeron retires and Krejci. I don't know why these guys are retiring. They're still so good. Keep going, but we'll wait and see what happens with Kevin Hayes.
Yeah, the other guy that we've heard some mumblings around is Colton Parayko. Although we saw a report today that some of the interest, I think, is cooled a little bit. Certainly, you've got a bunch of teams that have already given up their assets, but I just can't help but think that teams are nervous about acquiring a player with 7 more seasons on the books at $6.5 million. Over or under on 2.5 trades tonight before we get to tomorrow's show, Reem?
Tonight? I thought you meant from now until the podcast is uploaded around 2:30. Yeah, 2.5. Yes, I'm taking the over for sure on that. Yeah, so I'll go that. As far as Colton Parayko, doesn't Parayko have a no trade, or does it not?
Yeah.
Why are we talking about him? He has a no trade. I don't understand all the talk about him. Because you think it starts on, I don't know.
You know what? I mean, maybe. I think St. Louis is obviously doing a rebuild, retool, whatever you want to call it. And there's interest, I guess, in Parayko. I'm not sure how serious the interest is, knowing what you're signing up for if you get him on the books for 7 more seasons. I mean, there's one thing to be liking to get players with term. There's another thing when that term is 7 more years. And I guess JT Miller's another player that, the contract, I'm not sure whether, it's a terrible contract. Again, at the end of the deal, it might be somewhat problematic. Right now, he could probably help teams, and he's got the full no trade once this deal actually kicks in the beginning of the year. So maybe that's a name that we'll be hearing over the course of the next couple days. Bottom line, tomorrow we'll be all over it. James Myrtle from The Athletic jumping on the program, and we'll also have Ken Wiebe tee up deadline day for us and look ahead to the home and home series with the Edmonton Oilers on the weekend. Thanks to everyone that joined us today. Another great turnout. Hit that red subscribe button if you haven't already, and do us a favor and hit that thumbs up on your way out. Tell a friend about Winnipeg Sports Talk. And a big thanks to Dan Robertson, Murat, and the 4-time Scotties champion, Kerri Einarson, who joined us on today's show. And of course, a big thanks to all the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Folks, have a great one. We'll be back tomorrow, 22 hours from now, with Myrtle and Kenny Weeb. We'll see you then. Have a great night, and thanks for being with us on WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.